All right, joined here on our weekly Ford Zoom call by Team Penske driver Austin Cindric. Austin going to be pulling double duty this weekend at Circuit of the Americas, driving in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the NASCAR Cup Series. And if you've got a question for Austin, raise your hand. We've got Austin for the next 20 minutes or so, so don't be bashful. Austin, I'll just kind of kick it off here. Just talk about, you've done this double duty a few times now. Just, what are your expectations here for this weekend at COTA?
Yeah, obviously, I think on the personal side of things, gotta eat my Wheaties. My braking foot's gonna be worn out after this weekend. I can promise you that. There's a lot of long brake zones at that place, and a lot of sustained brake load because these things don't stop very well. So I think that's probably on the personal side, but a lot of challenges to understand the cars, understand the track, and obviously great to have practice. First time since the Daytona 500 weekend that we've had practice. So kind of getting to talk about a practice plan kind of seems a little normal, and yeah, it's going good so far, but a lot left in the weekend for sure.
All right, let's get the questions kicked off here. Let's start with Claire B. Lang from SiriusXM Satellite Radio. Go ahead, Claire.
Thank you. Talk about the turns at COTA, what you've studied or what you've learned or what you know, like the most challenging ones or the parts on the track that you already know are going to be a bear.
I think the restarts are going to be wild. You have a very wide, inviting front straightaway. You even see it in the F1 races there. I mean, guys will stove it off in there and collect 3 or 4 cars. So I think restarts are definitely going to be pretty crazy in all 3 series. A lot of opportunities to pass at this racetrack, a lot of tire fall off, which obviously provides a bit of a dynamic to the race, whether if it's on strategy or on the racetrack. So otherwise, you kind of have every type of corner at this racetrack. So lot to look forward to, I think, for the NASCAR fans, and a lot of unknowns for us as drivers.
How do you digest what happens in the Xfinity race so that you can quickly turn it around for the race on Sunday? How will you do that? There's just going to be a lot going in your head. How do you break it down?
Yeah, obviously, I think the first thing I got to understand is what's relatable between the 2 cars, whether that's the setups we have in the cars, or the on-track time and what's relevant and what's not. So obviously, anything from the race flow to how the tires wear, I think is probably the biggest standpoint for us.
Yeah, thank you and good luck. You have fun there, okay?
Thank you, Claire. Let's move on to Mark Garrow, PRN. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. First, Austin, that save at Dover, man, that was as good as it gets. I don't know if I've seen anybody get it so far on the second move and not wreck it. So great job there. Pretty amazing to me after what I've seen there in the past. Can you talk a little bit about how the Xfinity Series is playing out? What's your general reflection here as we kind of near the halfway mark?
I don't think there's any clear favorites. Years past, by this time, you've kind of have 4 or 5 guys that have separated themselves, and I think any given week you can't really predict the top 5. So to me, that means there's a lot of parity in the series, and a lot of great drivers fighting for a lot. So that's made racing on Saturdays a lot of fun, and definitely maybe a different challenge than in years past, kind of knowing who's going to be strong and basically studying their strengths and weaknesses. You kind of have to just go out and do your own thing, which I like. So it makes every weekend different, which if that's from the driver's seat or from the couch. So it's been a fun year so far.
And can I ask you just what does it feel like to win a race where you make a save like that and everybody's going like, well, he's wrecked, he's done, he's gone, and then you come back and win a race like that?
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of those guys didn't have any idea that it happened, but at least from my end, I don't know if you feel like you got a new lease on life, or you feel like if you overcome that, you can overcome everything else. So it was definitely could have ended our day very quickly. So glad we were able to recognize that situation and obviously prevent a lot from happening there. So, but either way, yeah, definitely great to be able to recover from that and obviously go on to win the race.
You good, Mark? I'll take that as a yes. Let's move on to Dustin Long. Dusty, go ahead.
Thanks. Austin, obviously aggression is always important in any race, but I'm curious with the road course, is this an aggressive track, or where does patience play a role this weekend?
That's a great question. The first thing I think of is tire wear. That's probably where patience is going to pay off, but how much does track position matter or not? I feel like you can lose a lot of time by trying to pass someone especially in the hairpins. So I think that really opens up the opportunity for a 2-car breakaway to be very challenging, or at least, what if that's the first or second place guy or the 2 guys that you're racing. So I feel like the smarter you are about that, the more you can prevent getting passed while trying to make it past. That's kind of the worst thing possible, is trying to do one and lose a spot because of it. Past that, there's a lot of runoff. It's funny. We got a 50-minute practice session. You think about cautions and red flags, and if you're hitting a wall at COTA, you're doing something, or something's broke, or you've hit another car. It's a lot easier to hit another car before you hit a wall at COTA. So I definitely expect a very low attrition rate unless there's just guys piling into each other. So a lot of cars staying on the lead lap, a long lap on the racetrack. So track position will be important.
And you reference the hairpins and the potential to lose time. I'm guessing it's just if you hit the corner wrong and just drift out wide, or what? When you talk about that, what do you mean? How that can be a spot that you can really lose a lot of time?
Well, stock cars aren't very good at making sharp turns and not good at braking very well. So when you try and make 2 of them go into the same corner, you have to go a lot slower. So it gives the opportunity to the guy behind you to either get a really great run onto the straightaway, have a drafting opportunity down the back straightaway, or just completely clear them at the same time. I think that's what you saw at Indy last year in the Xfinity race. You saw AJ and I were able to break away from Briscoe when we started racing really hard, and then all of a sudden we're 3 wide going down the front straightaway with 2 to go, like all because we were racing each other really hard. So I think there's something to be said for being smart about that. Obviously, if you're racing for a win, it's the win. But there's probably more opportunities at COTA to lose time doing that than anywhere else.
One other thing I want to ask you is, as you go back and forth between the Cup and Xfinity cars, obviously Xfinity cars have the composite body, the Cup cars don't. They will next year. How much might that change things in Cup for that Cup body to be a composite, and what that will allow those guys to do? I'm curious. You probably found some challenges in what you can or can't do with the Cup car, and I'm just curious, is that a game changer, you think, on the Cup side, to have that composite body to do things you can do in the Xfinity?
I don't know if it's a game changer, but it saves you from disaster, I think. There's plenty of times, obviously, you got guys getting to the wall and they can keep on going, whereas in a Cup race, you'd fold a fender and you'd have to pit immediately. So, but there's also other times I've scraped the wall in an Xfinity car and had a right rear tire go down immediately. So there's no guarantee that you're not going to cause damage by hitting things, but it also makes crash repair probably a little bit easier for the teams, because you're not having to manipulate metal. It's more just removing the fiberglass. So it definitely changes some things, but I'm not sure as a driver to win the race you still have to be as clean as possible, but probably saving you from disaster is probably the best way to put it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Jeff Magliacetti, go ahead.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you for joining us as well today. There's been a lot, we've seen it through the entry list this week, that there's a lot of drivers coming in from different disciplines, a lot of guys who have run the Rolex 24, for example. Have you contacted anyone from any other disciplines of racing to get any insight as to how COTA works and operates, or have you relied more on the simulator? And if so, what have you learned about the track?
I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't using every resource I have. Our IndyCar guys have raced at COTA before. I've talked to some of them. Obviously, we have the Ford Performance Simulator, which is always a great tool, and especially for new events like this. And then obviously, Brad got to be part of the Goodyear tire test, as well as Chase Elliott and Martin Truex. So leaning on those guys, whether it's crew chiefs, engineers, the run logs, whatever else, to try and get ready for the race. So every resource I have, I promise I'm using it. So past that, there's not a whole bunch to study off of. So definitely going in a little bit blind, but we do have practice. So plenty of resources, and definitely important to use them all.
What can you say about the way that your team has set you up for the road course package? Because you did pretty well in the last year, top 5 finishes at the both road course visits last season. So what can you say about the way Penske's road course package has improved for you guys?
No, it's always been a strength for the 22 team. It's been a strength for me. So I don't see any reason why we can't be competitive. It's just figuring out how to use that practice session to figure out the most competitive package.
Appreciate your time. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's go to Lee Spencer. Hey, Lee.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Austin. Austin, after that little scuffle with Gibbs on Saturday, you mentioned a about listening to jazz, perhaps. What was what's your background with jazz? I mean, are you a fan of jazz? I was just kind of curious about that reference.
It was more of a Talladega Nights reference because when they go to Jean Girard and everything's happening behind him, they just pan to his in-car camera and there's jazz music playing. And I was not in a healthy frame of mind after we about got cleaned out. So the jazz music was definitely the influence for calming myself down. I will say that I actually do listen to jazz music. I've played jazz music in high school and band class. So I do like jazz music. I don't listen to it very often, but it just so happened that I listened to it on race morning at Dover. So um, that's all I got.
So, what band instrument did you play at Cannon?
I played the tuba.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go on to Anton. Go ahead, Anton, you're up next.
Thanks, Dan. Good afternoon, Austin. So this weekend we will be at the road course, and you're an experienced road course driver. Do you think that this could be the day where you can have your first top 10, top 5, or even your first Cup Series win?
Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity anytime that there's a new challenge for everyone. This weekend being a new racetrack and limited track time. So definitely look to do my prep work and set myself apart that way. Past that, I have very little expectation. I think I've learned a lot in the Cup races that I've done. I've definitely understood the talent level and what that means for how I need to approach the race weekends racing on Sundays. I'm definitely interested to see how it transfers over. As far as the road courses always seem to be a bit of an anomaly. I think they're becoming less and less so the more of them we add on the schedule, whether if that's on Saturdays or Sundays. So I'm excited for it. It's like I said, it's a new challenge, and look to try and take it head on.
Thank you. Wishing you all best for this weekend.
Thanks, Anton.
All right, again, if you've got a question for Austin, feel free to raise your hand. Let's go on to Marty Chikala. Go ahead, Marty, you're up.
Thank you, Dan. Austin, thanks for the time, man. Hope you're well. I joined in late, so I apologize if these questions were already asked. But going through the internet, I found an old archive of you driving around COTA in one of the old SRO America machines. Was there any takeaways you had from that, and anything that you could possibly use for this weekend's racing?
Yeah, last time I raced there was 2016, racing GT3 cars. So that would have been my last track experience there, and I do feel like that track has definitely changed a lot from everyone I've talked to. The track surface itself is sunk, the track surface is worn. There's a lot of patches in new areas, a lot of changes. So it's definitely not the same racetrack I raced on before, past the layout. But that's my past experience. From what I understand, there's a lot of guys. I know from firsthand, there's a lot of guys that have gone out there and done track days and tried to do the best they can to prepare for the weekend.
And then when you take to the track for the first time this weekend during the practice sessions, I can't recall if it's either Xfinity or Cup that comes first. What's the first thing you're looking for? Is it going to be how the car feels, the braking zones in these race cars, going into the turns? What is it you're looking for the first time?
I mean, it's a 50-minute practice session on a really long track. So the laps are going to be at a premium. So the faster I can get up to speed, the sooner we can make adjustments. And the sooner we can make adjustments, the quicker we're going to be able to differentiate ourselves from our competition.
Thank you, Austin. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
All right, I'll make one last call. Anybody got a final question? Dustin Long, go ahead.
Thanks. Hey, Austin, who do you look up to driver-wise, whether not necessarily this series, but in racing in general, or who you looked up?
When I was younger, I spent a lot of time at IndyCar races. So hanging around Helio Castroneves, Gilles de Ferran, Sam Hornish Jr., Ryan Briscoe. Those guys were really influential to me growing up. And it wasn't really till Penske merged their IndyCar and NASCAR operations all under one roof that I really got exposed to NASCAR. And when I started racing Bandoleros, the only guy that I knew raced Cup was Sam Hornish Jr. So when I raced, in Bandoleros and Legends cars, I was number 77. So I've had a lot of cool guys to really look up to and interact with on a personal level. And I've really enjoyed those experiences and to obviously kind of grow into an adult and know those guys still, a lot of them still as teammates or if anything, friends. So it's been cool to grow up around guys of that caliber.
And how you mentioned the IndyCar guys were influential, especially when you were younger. How so?
I mean, it's the guys you look up to. You see these guys doing amazing things on the racetrack, and then they come back into the Penske bus, and they're taking the hat off your head, and talking with you, hanging around. I mean, you guys know how it is, and it's definitely affected how I interact with race fans, because the smallest thing makes the biggest difference with someone that's there and absolutely loves what's going on.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Bob Pockras. Hello, Bob.
Yeah, Austin, do you expect people to pit before the end of the stage, or is tire wear going to be enough that you don't want to have even 2 laps on what potentially wouldn't be full speed before the start of the next stage?
That is the magic question, Bob. I'm not sure, but that's definitely on everyone's mind. The road course races, you have that option as far as pitting before the stages. I would say COTA has a shorter pit road than most tracks. So I think that if you're able to stretch it out far enough, you still have the option to still get stage points if you're one of the front runners. So definitely something to look at strategy wise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Let's go to Jeff, and then we'll close it out with Marty. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Dan. Austin, thank you again. And we've seen a lot of guys make the jump to the Xfinity Series, to the Cup Series a little early, but you've opted to stay for a 3rd year, even after winning a championship. So how has that decision paid off for you, and what have you learned about yourself as a racer as you embark through what's been so far a successful midway point to the Xfinity Series so far?
Yeah, I think it's yet to be seen. There's no right or wrong way for driver development. Whereas other sports, there's a set pathway that everybody follows, and this is how you optimize it. This is how your future stands if you're able to do your job. Racing, everybody knows is not that cut and dry. There's a lot of different pathways, and some guys don't get the opportunity to pick and choose when their opportunities are. And I'm kind of in the same boat. I didn't necessarily choose the path, and I think the path I'm on is really great, and I look to make the most of it. And I think next year it will be a good gauge to see how I've been able to take advantage of the opportunity to run another year, and obviously have some exposure for a couple races during the season.
Are you pleased with the way your Cup path has developed so far? Are you pleased with the progress that the 33 has made on all kinds of different tracks, including as we go to a new one this year to a road course?
Yeah, as a team, we've grown a ton. It's a group of guys that's my crew chief is the engineer on the 12 car. My car chief is the underneath mechanic on the 12 car. We've got shop guys that come to the racetrack. My race engineer on the Xfinity side is my race engineer on the Cup side. So he's double duty this weekend. He's just as busy as I am on these weekends. So and my pit crew guys, they don't get to do too many events out of the year. So they're pretty low on the rep count. So there's a lot of guys that aren't used to working together, and Kansas was probably our best race, just as far as establishing ourselves inside the top 15, racing against good cars and giving ourselves a shot. Obviously, we got smoked in the race and didn't get to finish it off, but I'm proud with the progress, and I've learned a lot, especially starting last, and continue to try and carry that trend onto this weekend.
Appreciate your time. Enjoy the weekend at COTA.
Thanks.
All right, Marty, let's close this out. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Dan. Austin, I'm glad Dustin asked that question about the IndyCar situation, because in advance of next week, we've got the greatest day in motorsports coming on up, and I know your dad's been a part of the IndyCar side and the NASCAR side of things. But overall, what do you remember from watching Monaco, Indy, and Charlotte back in the days as a kid? And then when you move up to Cup next year, what are you looking forward to being a part of that day?
Yeah, I would say that, my memories as a kid, I've, with the exception of last year, because we were racing at Dover, I've been to every Indy 500 since I was 2 years old. So it's definitely a family tradition for us to do that and show up at the racetrack at 6 a.m. Before everything starts off. Everyone's kind of standing around drinking their coffee, trying not to be nervous, watching the Monaco Grand Prix in the engineering room, and getting to see some of the IndyCar guys' reactions to what's going on is pretty hysterical, especially given our group of drivers. And then obviously watching the Indy 500, the fanfare that surrounds that. And then, usually at the end of the race, if we've won the race or not, it's usually somebody does a trip to McDonald's and you watch the Coke 600 from the infield. So that'll hopefully be the same experience this year, probably the last time in a little while that I'll get to do that. So definitely plan on making the most out of getting to go there again this year.
Real quick, maybe, yeah, I know it's a little early to ask, but maybe any consideration since Tim works on the IndyCar side, maybe a consideration of a double in the future?
I'd certainly love to. I think it definitely depends on my talent level as a driver in a couple of years. My focus is obviously on NASCAR, but I fully plan on going to Indy this year with the mindset that it'll be the last time I stand on that grid on race day until I'm either in the race or out of a job. So that's my perspective.
Thanks, Austin.
Appreciate it.